Hey guys, Jamie Dodger here, and I'm gonna be, watching some reaction videos that, you know, if I can find a really good one. I think there's one a bit down here. Yeah, we'll do Mine Chop. Motorbike.
The best defense.
Okay,
Is defense.
skip out.
Number 10. Daniel Radcliffe.
He plays Harry
Remember
Potter.
the last scene of Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows where Harry sends his son off to Hogwarts? Well, for that scene, Daniel Radcliffe was almost definitely wearing shoe lifts, or wedges, because he's only 5'5". Now, that isn't a huge deal when you're portraying a character that's barely 18, and obviously Harry would grow a little bit more after leaving school, but Daniel Radcliffe was all maxed out on height, and shoe lifts were needed to give him that extra middle-aged look. Unfortunately, Daniel Radcliffe's height might be having an effect on his career. After the Harry Potter movies, the only major motion picture that he's taken part in is The Woman in Black, where he had to continue wearing shoe lifts. Now, for all we know, he may just be wishing to lay dormant from films for a while, and he is by no means an unsuccessful actor. I mean, it's Daniel Radcliffe, come on. I mean, who are we kidding, right?
He must be so
But
small.
I wonder if his lack of height might be holding him back. Number 9. Johnny Depp. This is actually a case of mistaken height. All too often, Johnny Depp is listed at 5'10", right around the average. This is something people rarely question as it's not hard to believe, and he certainly doesn't seem short. But in actuality, he's 3 inches shorter at 5'7". This confusion can simply be attributed to the characters he plays. Some of his major roles include Captain Jack Sparrow from Pirates of the Caribbean, Willy Wonka from Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, and Tonto in Lone Ranger. All these characters were larger than life, and considering 2 of them wore large hats, and that Willy Wonka was surrounded by Oompa Loompas and children for most of the movie, you'd never really think to take Depp's height into consideration. He isn't incredibly short, but it's odd how so many of his roles would make you think he's taller than he actually is. Number 8. Seth Green. In the Family Guy episode It's a Trap, a spoof of Star Wars Episode 6, Stewie, or Darth Vader, taunted Luke Skywalker, also known as Chris Griffin, by breaking the fourth wall and making fun of Chris's voice actor, Seth Green. Stewie made fun of Green's movie Sex Drive, as well as his religious faith. However, he did not mention that Seth Green is only 5'3", one of the shortest people on this list. This is short enough that he can't reach most tall cabinets. It speaks to him, as despite his height, he has become very successful and popular for his voice acting, which, has nothing to do with height. Of course, he does have actual film appearances, but we feel most people know him from Family Guy or the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Number 7. Michael J. Fox. Another famous actor who's short by more than a few inches is the actor Marty McFly from Back to the Future, Michael J. Fox. Ever since the end of the trilogy 26 years ago, he hasn't exactly grown any taller and is only 5 feet and 4 inches tall. A lot of short actors prefer not to comment on their vertical challenges, but Michael J. Fox has gone on to the record to say that when you're a short actor, you stand on apple boxes. You walk on a ramp. When you're a short star, everybody else walks in a ditch. Funnily enough, compared to the other people on this list, it seems that the shortest stars seem to care less about being short, while the stars that are only short an inch or two are the ones that tend to conceal it. Number 6. Scarlett Johansson. Scarlett Johansson fills some larger-than-life roles in her many blockbuster appearances. For example, Black Widow in Marvel's Captain America, The Winter Soldier, and as an extraterrestrial Laura from Under the Skin. But she isn't exactly quite as large as the roles she plays. In fact, she only stands at roughly 5'2", meaning a fair bit of movie magic or fairly uncomfortable shoes are likely involved in some of her productions. Strangely enough, her fraternal twin brother is actually 6'3". She doesn't seem to care too much though. She commented that while she's okay with how tall she is now, she'd like to be taller and a couple extra inches would be nice. Number 5. Robert Downey Jr. How short is short, you might ask? Well, according to Robert Downey Jr., it's 5'8", especially when most of your fellow Avengers are all 6-footer giants. In fact, the height difference was large enough that while filming, Downey Jr.
Don't understand why this hero wears high heels.
Inches to conform with the rest of the cast. This probably ruined Downey Jr.'s confidence as he is so insecure that he actually wears straight-out wedges in his off-screen life. Even though he isn't actually short enough for it to be a problem. If you ask him about it, he might say he never expected to fulfill an action role that required a stronger physical presence, as it simply did not conform to his nature. But lo and behold, here he is in Marvel's Iron Man and the Avengers, and of course, wearing concealed shoe lifts. Number 4. Sylvester Stallone. You might not, for your own safety of course, want to call Sylvester Stallone short, but the truth of the matter is he's only 5'7". In fact, his wife is actually a few inches taller than he is. Regardless, you have to remember that this is the guy that filled the roles of Rambo and Rocky, and he is still as buff and fast as you would think. Also, Stallone is now nearly 70 years old, and is still in incredible shape, so we should probably stop heckling him over his height.
Yeah.
Number 3.
I'm getting
Tom
knocked
Cruise. The largest role Tom Cruise has ever had to fill was that of Jack Reacher, a 6.5-foot tall detective. But they must have used some real movie magic, or at least a box for him to stand on to pull this off, because in reality, Tom Cruise is actually only 5'7". He might call himself 5'8" or 5'9", but it doesn't help that he walks around with bodyguards who are all mostly around 6 feet tall. There's wild speculation about him using shoe lifts to look taller, but the only time this might have happened is when he requested them in order to look a bit taller next to Brad Pitt. Being only 2 inches or so below the
Brad
average
Pitt's my
isn't
favorite
that big of
actor.
a deal, but when you're as famous as Tom Cruise, someone's bound to comment on it eventually. Number 2. Bruno Mars. When you're a singer as opposed to an actor, height isn't exactly a necessity.
I didn't know
But
Bruno
that makes
Mars
it all
was
the
an
more
actor.
surprising when you see them in public, especially next to someone taller. This is a situation Bruno Mars often finds himself in when, for example, he's receiving a reward. He's only 5'5", and this was most painfully obvious when he stood next to a 5'10" Taylor Swift, who is also wearing heels. Unlike other celebrities, he doesn't try to disguise this with wedges or shoe lifts, but takes a far more fashionable approach by seeking out larger and larger hats that disguise his height just a bit. It's a little amusing when you see him next to someone particularly tall, but it by no means limits a singer in the same way it might limit an actor. Number 1. Prince. Prince was a legendary musician who recently passed away at the age of only 57. He was an innovative musician and made music in a variety of styles, not to mention that to date, he has sold over 100 million records worldwide. Prince is the shortest celebrity on this list, scaling in at only 5'2". However, he made a perfect example of not letting a simple thing like your height stop you from doing anything you set your mind to. For example, before he began his singing career, he was a basketball player through a high school, and his coach, Richard Robinson, reported that not even there did his height hold him back. Truly, despite being one of the shortest people on this list, he was certainly larger than life.
Yeah. So I'm gonna end this video here, and now we're about to end at 8 minutes exact.